On a warm summer evening, as the last amber light settles softly over the rolling hills of the Shire, Gandalf guides his old cart-horse slowly down the winding lane toward Hobbiton. There is no great errand tonight, no urgent word to carry, and no distant horizon calling him forward with any particular urgency. There is only the gentle rhythm of wooden wheels turning over a familiar road, and the unhurried sound of the horse's hooves falling one after another against the packed earth of the lane. Smoke rises in lazy ribbons from the chimneys of round little homes, curling upward into the soft evening air before dissolving into nothing, and the smell of pipe weed and fresh bread drifts out from half-open windows into the cooling stillness of the early night. The old wizard sits upon the cart with his long gray robes gathered loosely around him, and his wide-brimmed hat tilted just enough to shade his eyes from the last pale glow of the fading sun. He does not hurry. He has not hurried in many years when there was no reason to, and tonight there is no reason at all. The lane stretches ahead of him, curving gently between low hedgerows that are thick with the green of midsummer, and beyond the hedgerows the fields roll away in soft waves of yellow and gold, where the grasses have grown tall and unhurried through the long season. The horse knows this road. She has walked it many times before, and her steps are slow and even, carrying the cart forward with a steady, rocking motion that is almost like the motion of water, or the slow breathing of something very large and very calm. Gandalf rests the reins loosely across his fingers and allows her to choose her own pace. And she chooses a pace that is unhurried and gentle, a pace that belongs entirely to this quiet evening and to no other moment. The air is warm still, but there is the faint beginning of coolness in it now, the kind of coolness that arrives when the sun has passed below the hills, and the earth begins, very slowly, to breathe out the warmth that is gathered through the day. It is a pleasant coolness, the kind that makes the skin feel awake and soft at the same time, and Gandalf breathes it in slowly through his nose and lets it settle somewhere deep in his chest. He breathes out again, and the breath comes slowly, and with it comes a kind of quiet that has no edges. He watches the lane ahead as it winds between the hedgerows, and he watches the hedgerows themselves, which are full of small sounds. There are birds settling in among the leaves, rustling softly as they find their places for the night. There are insects moving through the grass at the base of the hedgerow, making sounds so small that they can only be heard when everything else is already quiet. There is the sound of the cart wheels turning, and the sound of the horses breathing, and far away and very faintly, there is the sound of water moving somewhere over smooth stones in a stream that Gandalf cannot see from the lane, but knows is there, because he has heard it every time he has traveled this road, which is more times than he could easily count. The evening does not press. It simply continues the way that evenings do, moving from one shade of light to the next without any sharp change, without any moment that could be called a turning point. The sky above the hills has been deep orange and then a quiet rose color, and now it is settling into a shade that is somewhere between blue and the memory of blue, and the first stars are beginning to appear in the higher parts of the sky where the darkness has already gathered. They appear one at a time, without announcement, simply present where they were not present a moment before, and each one seems to make the sky feel a little more still, a little more certain of itself. Gandalf lets the reins rest loosely in his hands. He watches the fireflies begin to appear among the hedgerows, blinking softly in the growing dusk, and he finds himself in no particular hurry to arrive anywhere at all. Each small light appears and then disappears and then appears again, somewhere slightly different, as though the fireflies are writing something very slowly in the air that cannot be read but only watched. He watches them for a long while, or for what feels like a long while, though in truth he has lost any close sense of how much time has passed, and this does not trouble him in the least. The old wizard has walked many roads and seen many wonders, but tonight he simply watches the Shire breathe. He watches its gardens settling into shadow as the light continues to fade, the shapes of flowers and vegetable plots and fruit trees becoming softer and less defined, becoming more like suggestions of themselves than precise things. He watches the lanterns flickering on one by one in the windows of the hobbit-holes along the lane, each one casting a small, warm circle of orange light out across the grass or the path, and these circles of light seem to make the surrounding darkness feel not darker, but cozier, the way a candle makes a room feel more enclosed and safe rather than simply illuminating it. He watches the inhabitants of the Shire drawing their curtains with quiet contentment, small figures moving behind the yellow glass of their windows, and then the windows become only rectangles of warm light. And then the curtains close across them, and there is only the glow coming through the fabric, softer and more diffuse, more like the idea of light than light itself. The horse continues her slow walk down the lane, and the cart sways gently with each step, and Gandalf sways with it, and the swaying is very slow and very even, and after a time it becomes something he is no longer aware of, the way that one stops being aware of one's own breathing when it is calm and regular enough. He passes a small gate set into the hedgerow on his left, and beyond the gate there is a garden that is already more shadow than garden, though he can see the shape of a large apple tree at its center, and beneath the apple tree there is a wooden bench, and on the bench there is no one sitting, and the bench looks very peaceful there in the half-dark beneath the branches, with the first fallen leaves of the season scattered on the ground around it, though it is still summer, still warm, and the tree is full of fruit that will not be ready for some weeks yet. He does not stop at the gate. He simply notices it as he passes, and then it is behind him, and ahead of him the lane continues to curve gently onward, and the hedgerows continue to grow on either side, and the evening continues to deepen by degrees so small that no single moment of change can be identified, only the gradual accumulation of many small changes into a night that is almost, but not quite, fully arrived. There is a smell of honeysuckle somewhere nearby, carried on a breath of air that passes across the lane from right to left and then is gone, leaving behind it a feeling of having been briefly touched by something very pleasant and very temporary. Gandalf turns his head slightly in the direction from which the smell came, but there is nothing to see, only the dark shapes of the hedgerow, and beyond it the dim outline of a meadow where the grass stands tall and still in the quiet air. He turns his head back to the road and breathes slowly, and the lane continues ahead of him, and the horse continues her steady walk, and the wooden wheels of the cart continue their slow turning, and all of it is very quiet and very ordinary and very fine. He stops the cart at the crest of a small hill and rests there for a while, looking out over the valley below where the lights of Bag End glow warmly in the distance. The stars are beginning to appear, one by one, unhurried as always. He pulls his hat low and breathes slowly, and the evening holds him gently, asking nothing more. From the crest of the hill, the valley opens up below him in a wide and gentle curve, and he can see the rooftops of Hobbiton below, the round doors and the curved chimneys, the garden walls and the paths that wind between them, and all of it is made soft by the distance and the fading light, so that it looks less like a place and more like the memory of a place, the kind of memory that does not trouble you but simply sits quietly at the edge of your thoughts and makes everything feel familiar and good. The lights of Bag End are warm from here, warmer than the other lights, perhaps because he has looked at them so many times over so many years that they carry with them the accumulated warmth of all those times, all those evenings when he has arrived or departed, or simply passed by on the lane below, and glanced upward at the hill to see whether the light was on in the round window, and whether the small curl of smoke from the chimney suggested that someone was home and at ease and comfortable. Within, Bilbo is not there now, of course. Bilbo has been gone for some years, gone on his own quiet journey to a place where things are simpler and slower, and there is no need for adventures or for the business of the world. And Frodo, too, has come and gone in his own time, in his own way. But the lights of Bag End are on still, because someone tends to them, and the hill is still the same hill, and the garden is still the same garden, and the hobbit-hole beneath the hill is still round and warm, and full of the smell of old wood, and good food, and the particular kind of quiet that belongs to places that have been lived in happily for a long time. Gandalf does not think about this in any heavy way. It passes through his mind the way that the smell of honeysuckle passed across the lane briefly and gently, leaving behind it only a sense of something pleasant and already past. He is not troubled by the passage of time tonight, or by the changes that time brings, because the evening is too quiet for anything to be troubling, and because he has known enough evenings to understand that the quiet ones are their own kind of answer to the questions that the louder days sometimes ask. He sits on the cart at the crest of the hill and looks out over the valley, and the horse stands still beside him, her breathing slow and even, one foreleg resting very slightly more forward than the other, her head dropped a little so that her nose is nearly level with her chest. She is resting or nearly resting, the way that horses do when they are tired enough to be still, but not so tired that they have fully let go of the evening. Gandalf can hear her breathing. It is slow and deep and regular, and it is one of the sounds that he is most familiar with in the world, this sound of a large and gentle animal breathing quietly in the night air. The stars continue to appear. There are more of them now than there were a few minutes ago, or what might have been a few minutes ago, since he has not been measuring time in any particular way, and could not say with confidence whether the interval has been short or long. The sky above the hills to the east is fully dark now, a deep and steady dark in which the stars stand out clearly and without any wavering, each one simply itself, simply present, simply occupying the particular small point of the sky that it occupies without any fuss or ceremony. To the west, behind him and to the left, there is still a trace of color in the sky, a narrow band of deep rose fading into gray, the last remainder of the day, pressing itself gently against the horizon before the night comes fully in and settles over everything. It will be gone soon. It is already barely there, but while it is there, it gives the sky a quality of being between things, of being in the moment that exists between what has been and what is coming. And Gandalf finds this moment, as he always has, to be one of the most comfortable moments in the turning of the day. He shifts lightly on the cart, finding a better arrangement of his long gray robes, and settles his hands in his lap, and breathes, and looks out over the valley. The horse makes a small sound, a soft breath through her nose, and then is quiet again. The cart does not move. The lane is empty in both directions. The evening is very still. There are bats now beginning to appear against the not quite dark of the sky above the valley, moving in their quick and irregular way between here and there, describing shapes in the air that have no name because they are different every time. He watches them for a while, following one, and then losing it and finding another, and then losing that one too, and eventually simply watching the sky in a general way, not following any particular bat, but aware of their movement as a kind of presence, a soft and quick motion that is the opposite of the stillness of the stars, but does not disturb it. From somewhere below in the valley, very faintly, there comes the sound of a door closing. Then nothing. Then the sound of a dog barking once, briefly, and then falling silent again. These sounds travel up from the valley in a way that makes them feel very small and very far away, as though they belong to a world that is much smaller than the sky, which of course they do, but the smallness of them tonight feels not sad, but simply comfortable, the way that a small fire feels comfortable in a large room. Gandalf breathes. The horse breathes. The evening breathes. He thinks in a vague and undemanding way of nothing in particular. Or rather, he thinks of many things in the way that one thinks of things when the mind is very quiet and not being directed anywhere, when thoughts come and go like the fireflies in the hedgerow below, appearing and disappearing without pattern or urgency, present for a moment and then not present, leaving behind them no need for anything. He thinks of roads he has walked, many roads, long roads, roads through forests and across plains and over mountains that were cold and high and far from everything green and warm. He thinks of those roads without any particular feeling, simply aware of having walked them, the way one is aware of having been in a place, without needing to return to it or to make sense of it. The roads were what they were. They led where they led, and they had brought him here, to this hill, on this evening, which is a very good place to be brought, on a very good evening to arrive. He thinks of fires, many fires, fires in the fireplaces of inns, and the open fires of campsites, and the small fires of travelers' pipes, lit against the cold, of a late night on a road with no shelter near. He thinks of the warmth of fires without particular detail, simply the sensation of warmth, the way that warmth settles into the hands and the face and makes the rest of the world feel further away and less important than it did before. He thinks of mornings and of how mornings in the Shire always seem to arrive with a kind of cheerful certainty that is particular to this place. The light coming in through the circular windows of the hobbit-holes in a warm and ordinary way, the smell of breakfast already present before one has fully woken, the sound of the birds in the garden already engaged in their own unhurried business. He thinks of mornings without any urgency, without any sense that the morning he is thinking of is one he needs to return to or prepare for. It is simply a morning, one of many, and it was fine. The stars have continued to gather in the sky above him while his thoughts have been wandering, and there are many more of them now than there were before. The sky above the valley is full of them, more and more visible as the last of the twilight fades from the western horizon, and they make the darkness feel not empty but full of something very distant and very quiet and very certain of itself. He can see the river now, or rather he can see the glint of it in the darkness below, a faint silver thread winding between the banks of the water where it curves through the valley and past the mill and under the bridge and on toward the east, always moving, always making its own unhurried way toward somewhere further on. And this movement is so slow from this distance that it is more like stillness than movement, more like the idea of flowing than flowing itself. The mill is dark tonight. Its wheel is still. You can see the shape of it against the lighter darkness of the river, the large wheel motionless in its channel, the building behind it a dark and quiet shape against the hill beyond. During the day the mill is always active, always turning, always making the particular grinding and splashing sounds that belong to mills and to the turning of the world's daily work. But at night it is simply a shape, a comfortable and familiar shape, and the stillness of it is part of the stillness of the whole valley, part of the agreement that everything here has made with the night. Gandalf does not move from the crest of the hill. There is no reason to move yet, and many reasons to remain, chief among them being that remaining requires nothing of him, and the view from the hill is pleasant, and the horse has not yet shifted her weight or turned her head to suggest that she would like to move on. They remain together on the crest of the hill, the old wizard and the old horse, and the cart between them sits very still, and the lane runs away on either side into the soft darkness of the evening, and all of it is very fine. The warmth of the day is still in the stones of the lane beneath the cart wheels. He cannot feel it from where he sits, but he knows it is there, the slow releasing of the day's heat back into the night air, the way that the earth gives back what it has taken, slowly and evenly, over the long hours of the night. By morning the stones will be cool again, and the dew will have settled on the grass, and the valley will be full of a freshness that belongs entirely to early morning and to no other time. But that is many hours away, and between now and then there is only this evening, only this quiet, only this hill and this sky and this slow and pleasant nothing. He shifts his gaze upward to the stars again and holds it there for a while, simply looking. He knows these stars very well. He has known them for a very long time, long enough that their patterns are as familiar to him as the lines of his own hands, though the lines of his own hands have changed considerably over the years, while the stars have not changed at all, or have changed only in ways that require a longer view than a single lifetime to perceive. They are steady and very bright tonight, the air being clear and still, and they give the sky a quality of great depth, as though the darkness above is not a flat surface, but a thing of considerable distance, a depth that goes on beyond any reasonable comprehension into something very far away and very quiet. He breathes in slowly and breathes out slowly, and the night air tastes of grass and water and the faint, distant smoke of the chimneys below, and it tastes of something else as well, something that has no name, only the quality of being very old and very ordinary, and entirely without urgency. He has lit his pipe at some point during the sitting on the hill, though he cannot remember the exact moment of lighting it, only that it is now lit, and that the smoke from it rises in a slow and steady line, upward into the still air above the cart, rising and dispersing in a way that is very peaceful to watch, the line growing thinner as it rises until it is simply part of the air and indistinguishable from it. The smoke has a smell that is familiar and comfortable, and it mixes with the smell of the evening air in a way that neither overpowers the other, but simply adds one layer to another, the way that layers of sound can exist together without any of them needing to be louder than the others. He watches the smoke from his pipe without particular attention, the way one watches something familiar without truly looking at it, simply aware of its presence as one is aware of the presence of an old friend in a room, even when one is not looking directly at them. The smoke rises and thins and disappears, and there is always more smoke behind it. And the disappearing is not an ending, but simply the next thing that the smoke does. The way that breath disappears when it leaves the body and joins the larger air. And this is not an ending either. The horse stirs very slightly, shifting her weight from one rear leg to the other, and this small movement runs through the harness and into the cart as a very faint tremor, barely perceptible. And then she is still again. Gandalf does not move. He simply receives this small signal and notes it without interpretation, the way one notes the sound of a clock ticking, not as information requiring action, but simply as presence, as evidence that something is happening somewhere in the world, quietly and without urgency. Below in the valley, another light has come on in one of the windows he can see from the hill, a small orange rectangle that appeared while he was not looking at it and is now simply present, warm and still, in the wall of a hobbit-hole he cannot quite identify from this distance in this light. It does not matter which hobbit-hole it is. It is enough to know that someone is there within it, comfortable in the warmth of their own small home, with the evening arranged around them in its ordinary and pleasant way. He thinks of hobbit-holes. He thinks of the particular quality of their interiors, the way they smell of good food and polished wood and the kind of dust that accumulates in places where people live happily without being obsessively tidy, the kind of dust that is simply evidence of a life being lived. He thinks of the low ceilings and the round doors and the way the windows look out at ground level on the gardens, so that when one sits inside, one can see the grass at eye level and the boots of anyone passing along the path. And this is a view of the world that is at once very small and very particular, and somehow perfectly suited to the way that hobbits have always lived, close to the ground and close to the things that grow in it. He thinks of meals he has eaten in hobbit-holes, and of how the tables were always laid very carefully, with everything in its right place and more food than could easily be accounted for, and how the eating of these meals was always a slow and attentive process, hobbits being people who understand very well that the pleasure of a thing is increased by the unhurried attention paid to it, and who have never needed to be convinced of this because it is simply the way they have always lived. He thinks of these meals without hunger, simply with appreciation for the memory of them, the way one remembers a good thing without needing it to be happening again right now. The pipe has gone out, he notices, at some point while he was thinking about hobbit-hole meals and the particular quality of the light inside them. He holds it between his fingers for a moment without relighting it, simply aware of its weight and its warmth, and then he tucks it into the folds of his robe and rests his hands back in his lap, and the evening continues exactly as it was before, unchanged by this small event. He is not cold. The air has continued to cool as the night has deepened, but it is still warm enough that the cooling is only a pleasant contrast, the kind that makes one aware of the warmth of one's own body in a comfortable way. He pulls his robes a little more closely around him, not from need, but from the habit of comfort. The way one arranges a blanket, not because one is cold, but because the arrangement of it is itself pleasant. The settling of folds and the smoothing of fabric being a small action that requires nothing and costs nothing and leaves behind it only a sense of being comfortably arranged. The horse has lowered her head a little further while he was not looking, and he can hear her breathing now very clearly in the quiet of the hill. Long, slow breaths in and long, slow breaths out, steady as the tide of a very small and very calm sea. He listens to her breathing for a while without thinking anything particular about it, simply present with the sound, the way one can be present with music that one has heard many times before, hearing it without the need to analyze it or remember it, simply receiving it as it arrives, moment by moment, breath by breath. The Shire is settling now. He can feel it, though feeling is perhaps not exactly the right word, or perhaps there is no exactly right word for the way that a very old person who has known a place for a very long time can simply know when that place has settled into its night time, the way one knows when a room has gone quiet, not by any single sound, but by the quality of the quiet itself, the particular texture of it, the way it has of filling all the spaces between things and making everything that is still also seem more still. The Shire at night has a quality of being gathered into itself, all its small daily activities concluded for the day, all its small daily concerns laid aside until morning, all its inhabitants arranged in their beds or their chairs or beside their fires, comfortable and easy, not thinking about anything very much, or if they are thinking only of comfortable things, of tomorrow's plans, or of pleasant memories, or of nothing at all, simply resting in the way that is perhaps the most ordinary and the most perfect way of being that there is. He is aware of the sounds that remain. The water in the river below, which he can hear now as a very faint murmur when the air is still enough, a sound that is so constant and so gentle that it is almost more like silence than sound, the kind of sound that makes silence feel more complete rather than less. An owl calling somewhere in the trees on the far side of the valley, a long and low call that arrives and hangs for a moment and then dissolves into the surrounding quiet. The occasional small sound from the hedgerow below the hill, where the wind, if there were a wind, might move the leaves, but there is no wind tonight. So the sounds from the hedgerow are only the sounds of small animals moving through the grass, sounds so small and so infrequent that each one arrives as a small surprise and then is quickly forgotten. These sounds do not crowd the evening. They are part of it, part of what the evening is, and they exist together in a way that is comfortable and complete, each one occupying its proper place in the arrangement of the night's sounds, none of them pressing or urgent, none of them asking for anything, simply present in the way that things in the Shire tend to be present, which is to say fully and comfortably and without apology. Gandalf breathes. The horse breathes. The evening breathes. He has been sitting on the hill for some time now, long enough that the stars have moved slightly in their arc across the sky, though this movement is so slow that he cannot see it directly, but can only know that it has happened by the way certain stars that were to the right of a particular tree on the far hillside, are now more directly above it. This slow turning of the sky is one of the most reliable things in the world, and the knowledge of its reliability is itself a kind of comfort. The comfort of knowing that something is moving steadily and without interruption, even when one cannot perceive the movement directly. He thinks about the stars, not about what they are in any scientific or cosmological way, but simply about their nature as things that are present and distant and very consistent. They have been there for longer than the Shire has existed, longer than the hills on which the Shire sits, longer than anything he can point to or name in this valley, and they will be thereafter. And this simple fact is not troubling but comforting, the way that very large things can be comforting when they are also very steady, the way that the mountains were comforting to look at from the plains, not because they were reachable, but because they were certain. The night air carries now the smell of something cool and slightly damp, the smell that comes when the dew begins to settle on the grass, though it is not so late that the dew is heavy yet, only beginning, only the first very faint suggestion of moisture in the air that announces that the night is fully arrived, and that the cool and the quiet will continue until morning. This smell is one he associates entirely with peace, with the kind of night that asks nothing and gives everything, with being still in a place that is also still, without the need to be anywhere else or to do anything other than what one is already doing, which is to say almost nothing at all. He lets his gaze fall from the stars to the valley again, and the valley is darker now than it was, the shapes within it softer and less distinct, the lights warmer and smaller against the general dark. Bag End is still lit. The warm glow from its windows has not changed, has been steady the entire time he has been sitting on the hill, a small and steady warmth in the middle distance that he has been aware of all along, without directing his attention to it, the way one is aware of a fire in the room without needing to look at it directly to know that it is there. He considers in a very slow and undemanding way whether he might descend the hill and continue along the lane. There is nowhere particular he needs to be tonight. He might continue to Bag End and sit for a while in the garden there, where there is a stone bench beneath a very old tree that he has sat on many times, or he might simply remain here on the hill until he feels ready to move on, or he might turn the cart and take a longer way around the valley, past the mill, and along the river path, where the water willows lean out over the bank and trail their long leaves in the current. Or he might stay here a little longer. There is no reason not to. He stays a little longer. The horse is very still now, stiller than before, her breathing slow and very deep. She is not asleep exactly, but she is in that state that lies between waking and sleeping, the state in which the body is fully rested, but the mind is still present enough to respond if it is needed, a state that old and experienced animals know how to enter very smoothly and remain in for as long as necessary without any effort at all. He can hear her breathing in the quiet, and the sound of it is slow and even, and it is one of the most peaceful sounds he knows, the breathing of an old and gentle animal in a quiet place on a quiet evening. He thinks without particular direction of all the evenings he has spent in the Shire over the years, how many of them there have been, how similar they have all been in the most essential ways, and how the similarity of them is not repetition but accumulation, the way that each evening that has been quiet and fine has added to the store of quiet fine evenings, and made the next one more clearly what it is, more clearly good, more clearly the right kind of thing for an evening to be. He does not think he would change any of them, even the ones that ended in rain or in the uncomfortable business of having to sleep in a barn, because even those evenings were evenings in the Shire, and the Shire has a quality that persists through whatever weather or circumstance it is asked to contain. The quality of the Shire is difficult to name exactly. It is something to do with smallness, with the way that everything here is the right size for the lives that are lived within it, no larger and no smaller, so that nothing needs to stretch or to compress itself to fit. Everything simply fits, and this fitting creates a kind of ease that is very particular and very difficult to find in places where things are not the right size for the lives being lived in them. It is something to do with the particular green of the grass, and the particular roundness of the hills, and the way that the sky seems lower here than in other places, nearer and more domestic, more like a very large comfortable ceiling than a vast and indifferent space. It is something to do with the hobbits themselves, with the particular quality of their contentment, which is not the contentment of people who do not know that other things exist, but the contentment of people who know that other things exist and have considered them and decided that what they have is sufficient, and have made this decision not out of ignorance or timidity, but out of a very clear understanding of what they value and what they do not. This is a rare kind of contentment, the kind that is difficult to acquire and very pleasant to be near. Gandalf has been near it for a very long time, and it has done him good, he thinks. Or he thinks something in that direction, something without a very precise edge, something that amounts to gratitude for the existence of this place and the people in it, though gratitude is perhaps too large a word for what he feels, which is really only a very settled and quiet appreciation, the kind that lives in the body rather than in the mind and does not need to be expressed, or even fully recognized to be real. He becomes aware, gradually, that he is very comfortable. This is not a new awareness. He has been comfortable for some time, but it arrives now as a clearer recognition, the kind of comfortable that is not just the absence of discomfort, but the positive presence of something, a warmth and ease in the limbs, a looseness in the shoulders, a quality of the breath that is slower than usual and deeper than usual, and requires no attention to maintain. He is simply breathing, and the breathing is fine, and the evening is around him, and it is very fine too. The stars are fully present now above the valley. He has stopped counting them in the way that one sometimes counts stars idly when first looking up, because there are now too many to count, and the counting has become unnecessary, the stars having long since ceased to be individual points of light and become simply the sky, the night-time sky of the Shire, familiar and full and steady. He notices that the moon has not yet risen. He knows it will at some point, and when it does, it will lay its light along the valley and make the river visible as a bright thread, and the roads visible as pale lines between the darker fields, and it will change the quality of the darkness from the deep and starlit dark of the moonless hours to the softer and more silver dark of the moonlit hours. But for now it has not risen, and the dark is the deep kind, the kind that makes everything look slightly different from how it looks in the day, not threatening, but simply other, simply the night-time version of itself. He breathes in. He breathes out. He does not think of anything in particular. The evening is very still. After a while, which might be a short while or a long while, he gathers the reins very slowly into his hands again, just the lightest gathering, and the horse lifts her head slightly at this small change, awareness returning to her in the gentle way that it returns to old animals who are used to reading the small signals of the person they are with. She does not move yet, only waits, attentive without urgency, and Gandalf sits for another moment with the reins gathered loosely in his hands, simply remaining on the hill for one more breath, one more quiet interval, before the slow walk down into the valley. Then, very slowly, and without any hurry at all, he asks the horse to walk on, and she walks on, one step and then another, and the cart begins its slow rolling down the hill, the wheels turning easily on the smooth packed lane, and the descent is so gradual that it feels less like going downhill and more like simply continuing forward at the same level, only with a slight difference in the angle of things, a slight tipping of the world that is not uncomfortable, but simply the way that going downhill is. The lane winds down from the crest of the hill in long, easy curves, not steep, not difficult, simply the way a lane descends in the Shire when it has been made properly, by people who know how to make a lane that works well with the shape of the land rather than against it. The horse follows the curves without being guided, knowing the road as Gandalf knows the road, and the cart follows the horse, and the evening follows all of them down into the valley. The smells are different down among the fields than they were on the hill. There is more of the river smell here, the cool, damp smell of water moving over stones, and there is the smell of the fields, the particular rich smell of earth that has been growing things all summer, warm in the day and cool now in the evening, but still carrying in it the memory of warmth, the accumulated smell of months of sun and rain and growth. There is still the smoke from the chimneys, closer now and more particular, distinguishable into individual fires, each with their own character, one fire smelling of apple wood, and another of peat, and another of something more ordinary that might be any kind of wood at all. The lane at the bottom of the hill levels out and turns slightly to the left, and then runs straight for a short distance, beside a low stone wall beyond which a field of some kind stretches away into the dark, and Gandalf lets the horse take this straight straighten at whatever pace she chooses, which is the same pace as before, the slow and even walk that she has maintained throughout the evening without variation, as though the pace itself were the destination, and she has already arrived. He passes the lane that leads off to the right toward the mill, and he can see the mill from here, closer now, the dark shape of the wheel motionless in its channel, the building dark and still. He does not take that lane. He continues straight, along the lane that runs beside the wall, and then the wall ends, and there is a gate, and beyond the gate the lane continues between two rows of old trees, whose branches meet overhead to make a kind of tunnel of darkness, cool and still and smelling of leaves and bark and the particular old wood smell of very large and very old trees. He passes through this tunnel of trees at the same slow pace, the branches overhead very dark against the slightly lighter dark of the sky, and the stars are not visible here, only the close darkness of the trees, and this darkness is comfortable, the way that enclosed spaces are comfortable when they are not too enclosed, and when one knows how long they will last and where they will end. He knows this tunnel of trees. It is perhaps 30 cart lengths long, and it opens at the other end onto a wider road that runs along the edge of the village, and he has passed through it more times than he can count, and each time it has been exactly this, cool and dark and smelling of leaves, with the stars hidden and the enclosed feeling of the branches overhead, and then the opening at the far end where the wider road begins. He passes through, and the wider road opens before him, and the stars return above him, and he breathes out slowly, as though he has been holding a very gentle breath, and the village is around him now, the paths and the gates and the windows with their warm light and the gardens that are all shadow and smell in the evening. He does not hurry through the village. There is no reason to hurry, and the village is pleasant at this hour, quiet and warm, and going about the very end of its evening business, which is mostly the business of concluding things, of banking fires and putting away the last of the dishes, and taking one more brief look at the garden before closing the door, the small rituals of ending a day that are universal among people who live in homes and keep them well. He passes one hobbit smoking a pipe on the bench outside his door, and the hobbit raises a hand in greeting without rising from the bench, and Gandalf raises a hand in return without stopping the cart, and this exchange is complete and perfect in itself, requiring nothing further. Two old acquaintances acknowledging each other in the evening with a gesture that says everything necessary and nothing more. He passes the inn, from which comes the sound of low conversation and the warm smell of the fire within, the firelight visible through the thick glass of the windows as a flickering orange warmth that makes the night outside seem not colder, but more clearly night-time, more clearly its own thing, complete in itself. He does not stop at the inn tonight. He passes it slowly, and the sound of the voices within fades behind him, becoming part of the general quiet of the evening, joining the other sounds, and then becoming indistinguishable from them. He passes the small bridge over the water, and the horses' hooves make a different sound on the planks of the bridge, a slightly hollow sound that is the same every time, and always somehow satisfying. The particular small music of a wooden bridge accommodating the weight of a horse and cart, and then the bridge is behind him, and the hooves are on packed earth again, and the sound returns to the familiar rhythm of the evening walk. The lane that leads up toward Bag End is on the left, and he turns the horse gently onto it, and the horse turns without resistance or surprise. Knowing this lane too, having been up it many times, and the lane begins to climb, not steeply, but unmistakably, the gentle upward slope of the hill that Bag End sits upon, the most comfortable hill in the most comfortable place in the world. Or so it has always seemed to him on evenings like this one, when he is approaching it from below in the dark, with the lights warm in the windows above. The garden walls are on either side of the lane now, and the gardens beyond them are invisible in the dark, but present in the smell, the particular warm and complicated smell of a Shire garden in full summer, many kinds of flowers and many kinds of vegetables all mixed together into something that is not any of them individually, but all of them at once, a smell that is both particular and general, both familiar and indefinably pleasant. He stops the cart at the gate and sits for a moment with the reins in his hands, and the gate before him, and the dark garden beyond. It and the round door of Bag End at the end of the path, with the light on inside, warm and yellow through the glass. He does not go in. He does not tonight need to go in. He is simply here at the gate, as he has been at this gate so many times before, and this being here is sufficient, is itself the thing, is the evening arriving at its own natural resting place without needing to go further. He sits at the gate and looks at the door and breathes, and the garden is quiet around him, and the horse is quiet beside him, and the lane is quiet behind him, and the whole of the Shire is quiet in the way that it is quiet at this hour, settled and easy, all its small concerns laid aside for the night. He can hear the water in the garden, the sound of the small fountain that has been in the garden of Bag End for as long as anyone can remember, a continuous soft sound that is the same in the daytime as in the nighttime, the same in summer as in winter, always there, always steady, water moving over stone in a small and endless circle. He listens to it, and it is very pleasant, the sound of something that does not stop, the sound of something that continues, and this continuousness is its own kind of comfort, the comfort of something that was here before this evening and will be here after it, that belongs to a longer time than any particular evening, and that asks nothing of the evening but only continues within it. He breathes in the smell of the garden one more time, slowly and without hurry, and then he gathers the reins very lightly in his hands again, and the horse stirs at this signal, and he guides her gently away from the gate and back along the lane the way he came, down the hill and through the village, and out the far side of it along the lane toward where he will spend the night, which is a place he is moving toward in the same unhurried way that he has moved toward everything this evening, without urgency, without the sense that arriving is more important than the going. The village is quieter now than it was when he passed through it earlier, the last lights going out in the windows one by one, the last conversations concluded, the last pipes smoked and set aside. He passes the inn again, and there is less light now in the windows, and the conversation within has diminished to something very low and intermittent, the sounds of the very last part of the evening, the part where things are winding down naturally into silence. He passes the bridge again, the hooves making their small hollow music on the planks, and then the earth again, and the lane runs ahead of him in the dark, lit only by the stars that are very clear tonight, clear enough to cast a faint shadow from the hedgerows onto the road, barely visible, only the suggestion of a shadow, but present. He is in no hurry. He will arrive when he arrives, and the arriving will be quiet and unhurried, and he will settle himself for the night with the same slow attention he has given to everything this evening, and the night will continue around him, the stars moving in their slow arc, the river running in its steady course, the Shire breathing in and out in the dark. The lane runs between the fields now, away from the village, and the fields are very still on either side, the grain standing in the dark, and he passes between them with the cart rolling slowly on the smooth lane, and the horse walking steadily, her breathing slow and even, her hooves falling in the same rhythm they have kept all evening, and the sound of the cart is the same as it was when the evening began, the same slow rolling, the same gentle creak of the wood, and the evening is the same as it was when the evening began, quiet and warm and full of the particular comfort of the Shire. He does not think about where he is going. He simply goes, and the lane continues ahead of him, and the stars continue above him, and the fields continue on either side, and all of this is the same and will be the same, and this sameness is not boring but settling, not monotonous but deeply comfortable, the comfort of things being exactly what they are, and exactly where they are, and not requiring anything to be different. He breathes in, he breathes out, the horse breathes, The fields breathe. The Shire breathes. He lets his eyes move over the sky above the lane, slowly from left to right and back again, and the sky is full of stars and very still, and there is no moon yet, but there will be a moon later, rising slow and steady over the eastern hills to lay its light along the valley. And by the time the moon rises, he will be settled for the night, and the moonlight will come in through a window and lie across the floor in a pale rectangle, and he will be aware of it in a dim and comfortable way, not quite awake enough to attend to it, but present enough to know that it is there, that the night is continuing, that the stars are moving in their slow arc, that the Shire is sleeping all around him in its contented and unhurried way. But that is later. That is when the moon has risen and the night is deep. For now the moon has not risen, and the lane is lit only by the stars, and the cart is moving slowly between the fields, and the evening is in no hurry, and he is in no hurry, and the horse is in no hurry, and all of them together are making their slow way through the night time. Shire in the only way that the night time Shire wants to be moved through, which is slowly and quietly, and with full attention to what is here and now and exactly as it should be. The lane bends gently to the right and then straightens again, and there is a stand of willows to the left where the ground is a little lower and a little damper, and the willows are dark shapes against the sky, their long branches hanging very still in the quiet air, and they make the lane feel enclosed, for just a moment sheltered, and then the willows are behind him, and the lane opens again, and the sky returns above him, wide and dark and full of stars. He is comfortable. He is very comfortable. He is as comfortable as it is possible to be on a summer evening in the Shire, on a cart being pulled by an old horse down a quiet lane between quiet fields under a sky full of stars. And this comfort is not a small thing. It is everything that the evening has been moving toward. And now that it is here, it requires only to be received and inhabited. And he receives it and inhabits it without ceremony or difficulty, simply present in it, simply resting in it, as the lane continues and the horse walks and the wheels turn and the night is all around him, quiet and fine. The sounds of the evening are very few now and very gentle. The wheels, the hooves, the breathing of the horse, the very distant sound of the river, too far to hear clearly, but present as a kind of suggestion at the edge of hearing. The small sounds of the fields, the occasional movement of something very small in the grass on either side of the lane. Nothing more. He is aware of his hands on the reins very lightly. He is aware of the smooth, worn wood of the cart seat beneath him. He is aware of the particular weight of his hat on his head, and the familiar drape of his robes around his shoulders, and down his arms and across his lap. He is aware of these things in the way one is aware of very familiar sensations, not with sharp attention, but with the soft and unfocused awareness of someone who is fully at rest in their own body, in their own evening, in their own slow and quiet progress, through a world that is asking nothing of them tonight. He breathes in slowly. The air is cool and faintly damp now, the dew more settled than it was earlier, and the smell of the fields is richer, the earth giving up its last warmth into the cooling night. And the smell of this is very good, very round and complete. The smell of a summer evening in a place where things grow well and steadily and in their proper time. He breathes out slowly. The lane continues ahead of him, pale between the darker fields, Visible in the starlight is a long and gentle curve disappearing into the comfortable dark of the distance. Not an uncertain distance, but a certain one, a distance that he knows, and that knows him, a distance he has traveled many times in the direction he is traveling, and in the other direction too, and will travel again, and this familiarity makes the distance feel not long, but simply the right length, neither too long nor too short, exactly what it needs to be for this evening. The horse walks on. The cart rolls on. The night holds everything gently in its large and quiet hands, and Gandalf rides through it in no hurry, in no particular direction beyond the general direction of wherever the evening is taking him, which is the only direction that matters tonight, and which is a very good direction indeed. He does not think about tomorrow. Tomorrow will arrive in the way that tomorrows always arrive, gradually, and with a particular smell of morning, and the sound of birds, and the light coming in through wherever he has slept, and it will be its own thing, tomorrow, with its own qualities and its own pace, and it will be fine in its own way. But it is not yet tomorrow, and he does not need to think about it, and so he does not. He thinks about nothing in particular, or he thinks about the lane ahead of him, and the stars above him, and the breathing of the horse, and the sound of the wheels, and these are not thoughts so much as presences, things he is with rather than things he is thinking about, the way that one can be with the sound of rain or the warmth of a fire without thinking about them, simply present with them, simply letting them be what they are, while also simply being what one is. The lane is long, and the evening is long, and neither of them is in any hurry, and this is enough. This is more than enough. This is exactly the right amount of everything that there is to be. He rides on slowly, and the night rides with him, and the Shire is all around him, sleeping and dreaming its gentle and unhurried dreams, and the stars above are very steady, and the lane beneath the wheels is very smooth, and the air is very still, and everything is fine. Everything is perfectly and completely fine, in the way that things in the Shire are always fine when the evening is warm and the road is familiar, and there is nowhere in particular that one needs to be. Only here, only the slow and quiet and entirely pleasant business of moving through a beautiful night in a beautiful place, unhurried and at peace. The wheels turn, the horse breathes, the stars hold still, the Shire sleeps, and the evening goes on very gently, very slowly, very quietly, in the way that evenings do when they are in no hurry, and the night is full and warm, and everything that needs to be at rest is at rest, and everything that needs to be moving is moving very slowly, and the dark is comfortable, and the air is soft, and there is nothing at all that needs to be otherwise. He breathes. The horse breathes. The lane stretches ahead, and the stars stretch above, and the fields stretch on either side, and all of it is very still and very quiet and very fine, and it will continue to be very still and very quiet and very fine for as long as the evening lasts, which is to say for a long time yet, a long and gentle and unhurried time, full of the particular peace of the Shire, and the particular peace of a summer night, and the particular peace of being old and comfortable in a world that is, at this moment and on this lane and in this quiet, entirely at rest, entirely and gently at rest. The horse takes one slow step, and then another, and the lane receives each step in its easy and familiar way, and the cart rolls on, and the old wizard sits within it, And the night holds all of it, and the stars go on being stars, and the Shire goes on being the Shire, and the evening goes on being the evening, slow and warm and full of the kind of quiet that asks nothing and gives everything, and all of it is just exactly as it should be, just exactly as it should be. The night deepens very slowly around him, the way that nights do when they are being themselves without any interruption, without any storm or wind to move things along faster than they wish to be moved. The dark simply grows more settled, more itself, more like the deep and familiar dark that belongs to the middle of a summer night in a place where summer nights are always warm and always quiet and always something to be received with gratitude rather than impatience. He can feel the night and the air on his face, the particular cool and soft feel of air that has been moving through grass and over water and through the leaves of trees all day, and is now very still, having arrived at the place it was always going to arrive, which is this place, this lane, this evening, resting gently against the skin of an old wizard, sitting in a slow cart behind a slow horse on a very quiet road in the very heart of the most comfortable place in the world. He does not resist the feeling. There is nothing to resist. The night is gentle, and the air is gentle, and the lane is gentle, and the horse is gentle, and the cart is old and familiar and gentle too, and all of these gentle things together make something that is larger than any of them separately. Something that has no name, but that he recognizes completely, the way one recognizes a place one has been many times before, not because it looks exactly the same each time, but because it feels exactly the same each time, feels like itself, feels like the thing it is. He lets his shoulders settle a little further than they were, lets the weight of his arms rest more fully in his lap, lets his breath come a little more slowly and a little more evenly than it was coming before. And all of this settling and resting and slowing is very easy, requires no effort at all, happens in the way that water settles in a still pool, naturally and without any assistance, simply finding its own level and remaining there. The horse's breathing is very slow now, very deep and very slow. He can hear it clearly in the quiet of the lane, each breath a long and unhurried event, in and out and in and out, steady as anything he has ever heard, steadier, perhaps, the breathing of an old and trusted animal who has found her own stillness in the night and is keeping it without effort, simply breathing in the way that breathing happens when nothing is troubling it, when everything is simply allowed to be as it is. He listens to her breathing, and his own breathing slows to something nearer to her pace, not quite so deep, not quite so long, but longer and deeper than before, and this slowing is pleasant, is something the body does gratefully when the conditions allow it. When the evening is this kind of evening, and the road is this kind of road, and there is nowhere to be but here. The lane bends very gently, so gently that he barely needs to move the reins at all, only the slightest pressure, and the horse follows the curve as she always does, as she has always done, and the bend reveals a slightly different view of the sky, a different section of stars arranged in a slightly different way, and all of them are still very steady, still very clear, still occupying their proper places in the great dark above the Shire. He watches the stars for a while from this new angle, not thinking about them, simply watching them, and they are the same stars they always are. The same stars that have been above this valley for longer than the valley has had a name, The same stars that will be there long after the names have changed and changed again. Simply there, simply steady, simply the night sky of the world being what it has always been, and will always be. He breathes in once more, very slowly, and he breathes out, and the cart rolls on, and the horse walks on, and the lane goes on ahead of them into the soft and quiet dark, and the Shire is sleeping all around them, and the stars are above them, and the night is very fine indeed, and it will go on being fine for a long time yet, for all the remaining hours of the night, which will pass slowly and pleasantly and without any urgency at all, the way that time passes in the Shire, when it is at its best, gently and fully, and with nowhere particular to be, gently, fully, and with nowhere particular to be.